Alright, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam, ala Sayyidil Anbiya wa Mursaleen, Nabiyina Muhammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. So this is the third part of the series, and where we'll probably have the most questions and the most discussion. There are going to be a lot of concepts I'm going to present that might require a separate class. And we'll see, inshallah, we'll go from there. I'm sure you guys will have questions on some of the things that I'll be presenting today, inshallah. So I've tried categorizing these into the major challenges that we face as Muslims. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list by any means, shape, or form. And if you guys do have additional topics, then we can always add them on to the end, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So I categorize them into 5, right? So the first 2 are ownership and investment. Ownership, there are a number of assets that we definitely can purchase, but I think the 2 that are probably most important and relevant to us are home ownership and vehicle ownership. In terms of investment, there are a lot of vehicles available for us in ways that we can invest, whether that be opening businesses, buying stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency. Something I'm personally interested in, so if I nerd out a little bit, you'll have to excuse me, and Forex, which is foreign exchange. Loans, so you have business loans, student loans, and credit cards. These are probably the biggest challenges, again, that we face as a community. Work, so if I work with mixed goods, right? So if there are goods that are being sold at the institution or facility that I work at, is it permissible for me to work there? Yeah.
What's mixed goods?
Mixed goods, so between halal and haram. Okay, that's what I mean by that. Or versus, no, I was going to make a joke, but it's fine. I can make the joke. You can. I was going to talk about free mixing. I was like, free mixing is wrong. Charged mixing is okay. And in insurance, and there are different types. I don't know why I put car insurance here, but so there's car, health, dental, vision, and life insurance. And we'll talk about these. Like, is it okay for me to get full coverage, for example? Can I get higher plans? Why can I get those, or why can I not? So what are the goals of the Sharia? I think it's important to understand that, okay, if those are the problems, in essence, and like, where am I going to be able to extract rulings and come up with solutions from the Sharia, because the Sharia might not address these specific transactions directly. Does that make sense? And we had mentioned these before, but basically these are the 5 things the Sharia came to protect if you look at the Sharia from a bird's eye view. So if I look at the Quran, I look at the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the themes I will find throughout it that it is trying to preserve these 5 things. It's trying to preserve life, faith, intellect, property/wealth, and progeny. And here, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with the ayah, إِنَّمَا حَرَمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُهِلَّ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ بِهِ فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So he has forbidden you only these things. Carrion, which is an animal that dies of natural or unnatural causes, that like it's not slaughtered. Blood, pig's meat, and animals over which any name other than Allah's has been invoked. But if anyone is forced by hunger, not desiring it, nor exceeding their immediate need, Allah is forgiving and merciful. So the question that might come up with this ayah is basically this introduces this concept of darura, right? This introduces this concept of necessity. If I am in the middle of a desert and I come across a dead animal, right? It's died of natural causes. Is it permissible for me to eat that animal?
Preserve my life.
Okay, to preserve my life. At what point do I decide that? If I've been hungry for a day, 2 days, a week?
I try every possible way to find it.
Right, I have to be on death's doorstep. Okay, I'm at death's doorstep, or whatever, I guess whatever threshold you guys have just created. How much of that animal can I eat? Can I take some of it with me? There's khilaf, right? No, I'm saying like these are issues that are like discussed and they're talked about. Like, okay, hey, listen, how do you define, number one, how do you define the threshold on whether you can engage now in darura? Like, what if it's been like 5 minutes, right? I'm in the middle of the desert, it's been 5 minutes. Listen, I don't know where anybody is. Like, I've lost my group, right? So what's the first stage that happens? Like, if I'm in the middle of somewhere and I don't know where anybody is, I immediately begin to panic, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to survive, even though I probably just ate and drank? Yes. Right? I probably have to go to the bathroom, right? Like, it's that close. So it's like, okay, does it begin at that point? Or, when the hunger pangs first begin, does it begin at that point? Or does it begin like, okay, no, you know what? I think I'm going to die, right? Does it begin at that point? Okay, is it okay for me now to take that meat because I don't know if I'm going to come across food again and carry that with me? Can I eat to my fill? Or should I only eat, right? So, and I'm presenting this because it's very important to understand, like the Sharia has these discussions, right? Because determining thresholds, whether it be a starting point for something or the amount of something, these are very reasonable academic discussions that the scholars and the fuqaha have, right? So the discussions, I know we're used to hearing a lot of, oh, this is halal, this is haram type discussions. For me personally, I feel that is a very superficial dealing of the Sharia, and I think discussing thresholds, understanding like the elasticity of the Sharia is an important role for any academic, any researcher. Otherwise, it becomes a very binary type dealing with Islam, like everything becomes haram or everything becomes halal, and it shouldn't be like that, right? There should always be a spectrum, there should always be a nuanced approach when it comes to these issues, except for those things Allah has clearly defined, right? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about lying, is there any elasticity for lying or stealing or backbiting or zina, right? Like there are certain things, it's like, no, we don't engage in those things, or we don't get engaged in those situations at all. So these goals are based off of what we call ta'lilat. In the Sharia, you have something called the ta'lil, which is the reasoning behind the prohibition of something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes He states them very clearly and openly. So for example, why is alcohol, the consumption of alcohol, prohibited? Allah says very clearly. That's one of the ayat, but that's not the reasoning. Yeah, absolutely, right. It makes you drunk, right? So it removes your sensibilities, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you enter a stage of sakar, right? Like you're in this state where you are not mentally aware of what you are doing, and this is why we have prohibited that. So now that I have the ta'lil, now that I have the reasoning for that, what can I do? What tool can I use? There's a tool called qiyas. So we'll get to it inshallah. So if I believe, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this ruling because He wants us to preserve our religion, He made this ruling because He wants us to preserve our wealth, He made this ruling because He wanted us to preserve our intellectual integrity, right? So now we have reasonings for things. And now that I have the reasonings for things, what I can do is something that is called qiyas. What is qiyas? What is analogy? Analogy is basically, if the reasoning stands in a particular ruling, then I am allowed to apply a ruling. Does that make sense? So if I understand, okay, over here I need to preserve life, then what can I do? I can make a ruling. If I say, okay, over here I need to preserve wealth, what can I do? I can now apply a ruling. If it's not clear that any of these things apply, can I apply a ruling? No, I cannot. Absolutely not. It has to be clear. And this is why when you go to the books of fiqh, understanding ta'lilat, understanding the reasoning behind rulings becomes very important, because that allows you to now do qiyas, which is analogy. Everybody with me?
Which as an average Muslim, should I be looking into the details of those things?
No.
Okay.
Right? So these are academic tools.
Okay.
Right? These are tools for who? These are tools for the faqih. These are the tools for the scholar. Can the average Muslim apply them? In general, no. Right? I don't want to gatekeep, right? Like that's not my job. But if a person hasn't spent time studying and they don't understand certain verses, they don't understand certain hadith, does it make sense that they would start engaging in fiqh at a high level, right? Saying that, I believe that there can be individuals, lay Muslims, who are more versed in particular issues than I am. Does that make sense? So I might have a Muslim who deals in a particular cryptocurrency. For those of you that might be familiar, I'll just use an example, Cardano, right? So Cardano is a particular cryptocurrency. He's read all the white papers behind it. He understands how the staking works. He understands how the nodes go through this and da-da-da. And he comes to me and he's like, no, Sheikh, I think it's permissible because this is how these transactions happen. This is how it moves. In that situation, I'll be like, you know what? You know more than I do concerning this. It doesn't mean he knows more than me concerning fiqh, right? But he knows more than me concerning that particular issue. Yeah, go ahead. Sure. So even in the situation we had spoken about, like, where does the heart come into play? Like when Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Istafti qalbak," that only comes after going through that filtration system of seeking, not like necessarily seeking knowledge, but seeking someone who can guide me and give me the choices. Right? That's all this boils down to. It's like, okay, hey, I went to 3 muftis concerning this issue, or I spoke to these scholars concerning this issue, and these are the 2 to 3 opinions that I received. Now, these are the boundaries I can operate between. And I might be like, okay, well, this sheikh, he seemed a little bit liberal. This one, and he seemed very conservative. This one, I feel he's more middle of the road, but the liberal opinion works a little bit more for me here. Or the conservative opinion fits a little bit better for me in my lifestyle here. I don't see an issue with that, right? Because the job of the mufti is to help create those boundaries. At that point, as long as those boundaries are defined, khalas, I can take them. Right? And there are certain times where the boundaries are all agreed upon between everyone. So if someone's like, hey, I missed Salat al-Luhr because I forgot, and I go to 10 different muftis, and they're all like, yeah, you need to make up Luhr. It can't be like, oh, well, my heart is telling me I don't have to make it up because Allah, He forgives, He forgives, when I forget, right?
Makes sense.
The first category that we had spoken about was ownership. So the first question that usually revolves around ownership is, can I own a home, right? Can I mortgage a home? And you have multiple opinions concerning this particular issue. The first one is no, you are not allowed to own a home. Why? Because you have an option in renting. And what proof do they use, or what do they say concerning this? They say, okay, riba is haram. This is a ribawi transaction. Therefore, there are no reasons for you to ever engage in this. And not just that, it is not, and we'll get to, we'll come back because it's really interesting if you look at the reasoning when we get to all the reasonings behind this, okay? Some say yes, you can. You're allowed to own a home, you're allowed to purchase a home, you're allowed to mortgage. You can take Islamic financing, that is one option, and the reason you can take Islamic financing is because it is the best of the worst options available to you. This is the opinion. And some of them say, no, it's sound, it's a completely reasonable alternative. And the reasoning that they use, the best of the worst, is they say it is a need, right? So now we were talking about darura. Some will say it's okay to go conventional banking. And some of them will say, why is that? Because it is a concession that's, again, because it is a need, right? So I want you to follow with me. And some will say that, okay, well, this particular transaction is not ribawi. Remember the conversation that we had about paper money, and the conversation we had on the values of homes appraised. So they're like, no, this particular transaction I would not consider ribawi because there's not an uneven exchange of value that is happening. Where was I? Oh yes, okay. So these are in summary the different opinions. Now if you look at the first one, they also say that it doesn't hit the threshold of need. Why? Huh? But over here they're using need as well. And the difference is in the istilah, right? The difference is in how they define need. These two are using darura to mean to preserve your wealth. And the first group is using need to mean preserve your life. Are you guys following?
Say it again.
So remember we said darura has 5 categories?
Yeah.
That group in the first, they're saying that this does not, by you not purchasing a home, you are not harming your life. And this group is saying, by you not purchasing a home, you're harming your wealth.
Okay.
Are you with me now? Which is why I find the first opinion problematic. Because you cannot limit darura according, the darura has to be applicable. Remember we spoke about how you apply qiyas? Now, what does qiyas have to do with preserving life in a home? What is the relationship there? And that's why I think it's a misapplication of it. Yes?
I was gonna say, I don't know, is that?
The rent argument, I think it's fine, right? Like people who want to rent and stuff, like I think it's great. Like, alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you. Do I think it's long-term viable as a community? No, right? I don't think it's reasonable. And not just that. Okay, I want to avoid riba and blah blah blah. That's great. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. But by me paying his rent, I'm just a second-hand party to his riba, right? Like I'm still supporting the system, whether it be, and if I have to support the system, why shouldn't I support it in a way where, like at least I benefit from it? So, like I said, I get it. I just don't necessarily agree. Yeah.
You just mentioned community. All these reasons are applied on an
Individual. Yeah.
Is there any reasoning around the community?
Oh yeah, yes, there are, and when we get further along, you'll see, inshallah. So this application can be an individual application. It can also be application on a community level. For example, the purchase of a masjid, right? So an individual is not buying the masjid. Who's buying it?
Yeah, no, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is there a ruling being applied to preserve the wealth of a community?
Yeah. So in this situation, it could be both, right? But the primary beneficiary is who? Me. Right? Like I'm getting the house in the end of this. The community might secondarily benefit from me because, okay, you know what? I have a basement, I can rent it out to a Muslim family or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there might be small benefits here and there. I'm moving into the neighborhood, so now the Muslim ownership around the masjid is increasing. You know, these are all very secondary, but I'll give a very clear example. Okay, we need to, like this is a space, we need to purchase a masjid. There are 30% of the homes in this area are owned by Muslims. Is there a need? I would say yeah. Okay, could we go to the bank and get a loan now? Because nobody else is going to loan out to the institution to purchase the masjid. I would say in that situation, that's a good application of there's a community need there, and we have to utilize these means.
So the people that are going, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
That are going with the left, are these, scholars, born, raised, educated here?
So
in the West, or is it? Because it's
yeah.
obvious for me to ask someone in Syria.
Sure.
The biggest.
I would have been.
Imam,
I'm saying even in Syria, if you ask the Imam like, oh, is this permissible, whatever, and he'd be like, no, and be like, okay, where do you live?
What is it?
I would ask him, where do you live? And he'd be like, oh, well, we've had this building for the past 7 generations. It's like, okay, well, I don't have access. Like you've built generational wealth, and may Allah bless you and increase you.
Exactly.
But what about someone who's starting out? Someone who doesn't have a family? Someone who, like, his house was bombed by the previous regime or by the Israelis, right? Like, and it's very unfortunate. Like, these things are still actively happening. My wealth has been destroyed, ya Sheikh, and your money, mashallah, has been preserved, and may Allah continue to preserve it. What do I do? Because the problem, I'll get to the question. The issue I have is, like, I don't have an issue with asking people overseas. The problem is, like, they have the same problem overseas. Like, home ownership in most of the Muslim world is unaffordable. It's not like, oh, it's so much better than America. America is actually better because the U.S. government demands, and regulates mortgages. Yes?
Oh, 2 questions. So is conventional mortgage allowed or not?
That's what the whole discussion was.
And they emphasize that you should answer.
And I should answer? I think it's permissible. That's the position that I hold.
And then the second question is, trading stocks haram, and is there a halal way of doing it?
We're getting to it.
So I'm sorry.
I wanted to add something else. As renters in the past 10 years,
Yeah.
we did not have a choice to keep moving from one house
Sure.
to the other because suddenly we're told they're selling the house.
Yeah.
And it's a big.
No, I'm saying there are a lot of additional burdens when we talk about, like, renting versus buying. Now here, a lot of people, there are some people who say, oh, renting is throwing your money away. I disagree with that statement, right? Because I'm purchasing use. Does that make sense? And for some people, if I'm only going to live in a place for like 3 years or 5 years, does it make sense for me to buy? Right? Like I'm tied to this asset. Selling it could be a problem. It could be an issue, and it's easier for me just to get up and go. So I think for such people, like people maybe who move around a lot, people who are looking to transition, they're like, okay, you know what? I don't have enough initial capital to get into purchasing a home. There's a group of people that I think renting definitely benefits for sure, and I think there are some people who should rent. Like, I think there are some people who are very fiscally irresponsible, and if you approve them for a loan or a mortgage, you have 2008. Right? Like I don't know if you guys remember the ninja loans, but like it's like what was it, like no job, no income, no it's no income, no job. No, it's like, yeah, they're just giving out mortgages like left and right. Like, people defaulted, and what happens is, like, when you have like a large population defaulting, then like it just crashes. It crashes the market and everybody's affected. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
So as an average Muslim, should
Yeah.
I go with the easiest way?
I advise, listen, I'm an easy guy. I like easy things.
Yeah.
Take the easy way. Bismillah.
Oh, okay.
Easy or like, because Islam isn't always easy. So I feel like when you put it like that, it makes
If
it feel
you see, Islam isn't always easy, maybe you're not practicing right. So, go car ownership. It depends on your reasoning. So, for example, if I'm a driver, right, this is the only skill set I have. I only know how to drive vehicles. I only know how to deliver. For this individual, I would advise them take the most economical route, right? See whatever minimum conditions that this company that you're working for is going for, and I don't care how you get the vehicle, right? So if you need something to fulfill those requirements, tawakkal ala Allah, say Bismillah, purchase the car, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can and go forward. If you're buying it for work, this also depends. Am I part of a vulnerable population? And what does a vulnerable population mean? Being very honest, right? So if I'm a single woman, going into mechanic spaces, those spaces are very predatory. And what should I do? I should probably purchase a vehicle that has a very good warranty, right? Something that has something extended to make sure that that vehicle is protected. For these people, I would also say take the most economical route. If I am not from the vulnerable population, if I'm a single man, if I'm a young man, I would say just purchase the most economical vehicle. But if I need it, then there's still options if I want to purchase a new or newer car. Next one, if it's for convenience, I just want a car. You still have an option of going to dealer finance. And what does dealer finance mean? This is called bay' al-mu'ajjal. Basically, what I'm allowed to do is if I have an agreement with you to purchase my iPad, and I'm like, okay, hey, listen, I'll sell this to you for $500. You're like, hey, listen, I don't have $500. I was like, okay, bet. I'll sell it to you for $600 over the next 6 months. Right? There's an increase, and this is a separate transaction, but it is between me and him, and the benefit is in the asset. The risk I am taking as the seller is the time. This is a completely halal transaction, even if they sell the contract to the bank, which is most cases what happens. Right? So you might have, for example, like whether it be Tesla or Toyota or Nissan, they all run specials, like 0% financing, 1% financing, 2% financing, whatever the case might be. You go in, they sign, and immediately they sell the contract to a bank so that they can get the money, and then the bank is the one that actually, what's the word? What's the word? Services. There we go. The bank is the one that services the loan. That's fine because my agreement was with who? With the seller. Right? My agreement was with the seller. So if you want to take this option of going to dealer finance, this is something that is completely reasonable. I think it's something that's completely halal and it's fine. Yes?
What's the reason for this? For two people, for example, if I buy from you,
Yeah.
it's halal.
Yeah.
But if the bank come, the third party,
Yeah.
it's haram. What's the reason?
The reasoning for that is because I'm still taking the risk on the asset. The bank isn't taking any risk. They're just forwarding the money. They're making money off the money. They're not making money off the asset. Because they're not selling anything. And that's the difference between what a ribawi transaction is and what asset transaction is. Or service. Yeah.
Would be Islamic banking?
Islamic, I don't know if they do cars, right?
I'm saying,
Yeah.
no, I mean,
Yeah.
they do the same thing with homes, right? They sell the
Oh, you know what? I didn't even explain Islamic financing, did I? Oh.
Yeah,
Okay, I skipped over it. So what is Islamic financing? If you hold the view that any uneven exchange, even in amount, is impermissible, I think it's a relatively reasonable model. There is a bit of a shared risk that's there. I appreciate the effort that they actually made. So you have like guidance, La Riba, UIF, like there's a whole bunch of them, right? And what they're trying to do is they're basically saying, I'm sorry, UIF, University Islamic Financial. UIF, interestingly enough, it's like not a Muslim bank. There's also Divan Bank. Divan banking is actually even Amja, like Amja's like they're pretty conservative. Even there, like Divan Bank is good. Divan Bank is not run by Muslims either.
Can you explain like what? How's it?
Because it's a business, right? It doesn't matter who gets into the business. You guys know it was really popular when I was growing up, maybe in the 90s, early 2000s. You guys remember KNC? So KNC was like this halal chicken provider. Guess who run KNC? Yeah, it was not run by Muslims. Hey, you guys heard of Omaha Steaks?
Omaha Steaks?
Yeah, so Omaha Steaks, they have Angus steaks that are halal, right? They produce two types of meat. You know what those meats are? Beef and pork. I'm just saying, like, and I'm not saying this because I don't want people to take advantage of these services because they're like, oh, you know, these aren't Muslim-owned businesses or whatever. No, man, like, go where the best product is. Like, I'm a very big proponent of that. I think it's good to support our community when the community is offering a good product, right? If you're offering like a trashy product, you can't come to me and be like, oh, support Muslim businesses, or you're like, you have terrible service. You're like, no, support Muslim businesses. No, man, it doesn't work like that. You give me a good product, I will support your business. That's how it should be. But so I just mentioned that as a side note. Regardless, so over here, how the Islamic financing works, for example, me and you purchase a home for $1 million. I put in $500,000, you put in $500,000. The monthly rent is $5,000. How are we gonna split it?
The monthly rent?
Yeah, it's $5,000 a month.
50.
50-50. I take 2,500, you take 2,500. I come to you and I'm like, hey, let me rent it. Let me rent it. I'm one of the people who put in the money, right? And the reason I want to rent it is because I need to use it, and I'm going to keep giving you the same rent because I want to buy back the shares from you. I want to buy pieces of the house from you after a long period of time. This is essentially how Islamic banking works. Now, the people might ask, okay, well, what is the interest rate about? My rent this year is $5,000. How do I determine the rate for next year? Inflation. So what do they use instead? Interest, right? So the interest rate that they use is that adjustment that they have in place, and it's an easy way for them to write off, like, I mean, whatever. Yeah.
So I dug into this a little bit.
Sure.
So the reason it's a little bit more expensive, I asked guidance.
They have less customers.
There's a
Yeah.
premium product.
Yeah, yeah.
Go to a grocery store.
Absolutely.
Allow me
Yeah, yeah.
The meat is expensive.
Yeah.
It's premium. It's a premium product. We'll mark it out.
I agree.
And I couldn't say anything. I thought, yeah.
Listen, I'm not even mad. Like, being honest.
Expensive
Yeah.
is it, like compared to the conventional?
I think it's like a 1 point higher, maybe 1.25 points higher than conventional mortgage, something like that. Yeah.
How is it premium?
Huh?
How is it more?
Well, premium is the term that they're using. It's exclusive. That we only have a very specific demographic that we're targeting.
So it's.
I'll use another example, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
If I want halal chicken, or if I want hand slaughtered halal chicken, which one's more expensive?
And slaughter.
Why?
That seems predatory. Less
Huh?
I mean, that's the example.
Thank you. It's supply and demand. Because if I'm selling chickens and I only have a limited market to sell it to, and I'm looking to recover my costs or whatever the case might be, I don't know what their profit margins are, being very honest. But I believe that there's enough competition to kind of keep prices relatively stable. So even if they're selling it for twice as much as normal chicken or quote unquote halal chicken, I get what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, ideally, everything should be affordable. Everything should be cheap. But if I'm asking for extra services, right? If I'm asking for more conditions, every little notch, what happens? You get a price bump.
Yeah, but your overhead is like significantly lower because you're not churning out product at like the same rate as like.
Exactly. So what do I do?
So it should be cheaper.
No.
Increase the price to be able to
Yeah, exactly. Because if I buy 1 million chickens and I buy 1,000 chickens, like bulk is where the price is, man. And not just that. You know how many people you know how many workers I need to go like this? Oh man, don't get me started. It's like this triggers me so much, dude. The number of workers they need to do this, like they literally hold razors like this in their hand, and they sit there and they stand there just slicing one after another. They have to take turns praying because they're not allowed to leave the conveyor belt, because once it starts, it can't stop. The number of those individuals who develop carpal tunnel syndrome from those small movements all the time. Oh man, I'm so triggered right now. But like, it's versus the guy who's like, and like slicing 10 chickens at a time. Bismillah. You know what I mean? Oh man, yeah. I can understand why they charge more. I agree with you, right? Like it shouldn't be like that. But unfortunately, man, it's just like it's supply and demand. You're not pushing out enough. Like, you know, the number of chickens that are required, like the number of workers you have to pay, like to, you know what I mean? It's just, I have to pay 10 people to do the slaughter to produce like what this one guy with the button is producing.
I was just gonna add,
Yeah.
that it is more expensive for them because
Hmm.
they have to start with non-riba money
Yeah.
to begin with.
So do you know where, and I only know of Guidance. Do you guys know where Guidance gets their money from? Like they need a big pool of money to purchase this stuff, right? Yeah. Most of the stuff is overseas money. It's like, it's not even local. Like, so they have investment firms overseas, like in the Gulf, where they are able to get these pools of money because they're not even able to get that amount over here. Like they can't even pool enough money here to purchase homes. I have friends who flip homes. Like that, what they did was flip homes. They had to, getting just like 5 people together to purchase a home. It's like he was like, it's like pulling teeth. And even though you can show them, be like, listen, this is my track record. This is the sales that I've made. I invested with it a few times. Like, alhamdulillah, the return was good. Like sometimes you get an 8% return, sometimes a 10% return, which is ridiculous. Like it's a lot of money. But even then, it's like, I don't know, like 6. I have to keep it with you for 6 months. Like, it's like, bro, it's an investment. That's how it works. And you're the one who was talking about supporting Muslim businesses. Like, what happened to the support? I'm telling you, like, we live in a real world, and there's just, unfortunately, there's a lot of selfishness in the Muslim community. So that's basically how quote unquote Islamic financing works, and how they determine. Does that make sense? And some of the problems Amjad had is like, okay, well, if it's a shared asset, how come the buyer has to pay the property taxes? Because I asked them, I've actually engaged with Guidance like on multiple occasions concerning these issues, just for clarification, so I can understand where they're coming from.
Buyer or the owner?
The,
Buyer.
I mean, the owner, a buyer, whatever you want to call him. I don't know. The person who lives in the house. Okay. So I don't even know what to call him anymore. Like, yeah. So the purchaser, the guy. Man. Anyway, the buyer. So the buyer is yeah, right. So the one with the less money. Yeah, well, that's a good point. So he goes to purchase a home, and they're like, okay, well, how come you don't share in the property taxes? They said, okay, well, property taxes are actually payment for services to the county. And we, as the lender, we're not benefiting from any of those services, so it doesn't make sense for us to pay. I said, okay, that's fair. So that's why I think, like I said, for if you have that mindset, I actually think it's a very reasonable product. Like just being honest. If you think like, okay, no, this is the proper way to do it, bismillah, do it. The only thing I will suggest for every single person in the room here, and this is a piece of advice that I had received, was there are 2 best times to purchase a home. 10 years ago and today.
Why?
Because everybody, listen, it's an appreciative asset. Yeah.
Sorry, just going back.
Sure.
Can you dive a little deeper into conventional banking and like the reasoning behind why
Sure.
they're not okay?
Sure. So it has to do with inflation, it has to do with appreciation, and it has to do with the safety nets that are available to the one who's purchasing the home. That's why.
I don't follow. That's because that's what makes it okay, or not?
Yeah, no, that's what my reasoning behind it. So remember the conversation that we had before about fiat and inflation and adjustments. So mortgage rates legally have to be the lowest out of all of the lending tools that are available. And most of the time, even when they're high, like even when they're like 8, 10% or whatever the number might be, like we feel it's ridiculous now because we've seen 2, 3%. But the reality is like if you look at the appreciation of the home and you add inflation to that, you're never paying more than the value. By the end of it, by the time you finish your mortgage out, it's very rare, unless you defaulted and you could only make the interest payments for, because you fell into some like financial difficulty or whatever the case might be. But this is my reasoning, and this is why I feel it's sound.
What are your thoughts on like Islamic financing, Islamic banks? A lot of their marketing pushes like risk sharing.
Yeah.
So where does that come into play when following?
That has to do with ownership, right? So over here, there's one. This is lending, and that's risk sharing.
Oh, okay.
Are you following?
Yeah.
That's the difference. Yes. Sure. Yeah. So the same group of scholars who say that there's a need because you need it for yourself. The moment you go to a second home, they're like, it's no longer a need. And if you feel it's a viable option, it's a sound alternative, then it's permissible for you to use to purchase a second home. Yes?
What if it's to make renting accessible to other Muslims in the community, and so you're taking out another mortgage to purchase another home?
I mean,
making it accessible to them?
you could come up with all kinds of reasons, right?
No, I'm trying to like find some like loophole or like
Yeah.
gerrymandering my way around. You know, like,
You're talking to someone who thinks it's fine anyway, so it's not like you're not going to get much of an argument from me.
the different arguments for and against.
Sure, and the thing is, like, okay, I mean, your intention can play a role, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, are there other means for you to earn? Right? If it's about preserving wealth, it's like, okay, well, aren't there other investment tools that you could utilize? Like, why real estate? And you can argue, and you can be like, well, real estate is something that I've studied. It's the market. I know it's something that's familiar. It's like, the asset is like this, and this. And that's fine, right? That's a conversation, but it would be an individualized one at that point. It wouldn't be like a blanket ruling, like, okay, yeah. People should purchase second homes to rent them out. Because it might be like, okay, yeah, I purchased like a beachfront property to rent it out, but it's like, okay, yeah, but in this area, it's a flood zone and it's very high risk, and like insurance won't cover you. Like, what are you going to do if you default? Like, what I mean? Like, it's a very personal conversation at that point.
Maybe you want to purchase them first to rent them, but then if you have kids, you want the kids to have an easy.
Sure, I mean, there are a bunch of reasons, right, that people can have to purchase a second home. Or a Staftinian.
It's like I lived in Dallas and like I met lots of business guys.
Yeah,
who
yeah.
were, like having lots of gas stations. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the year they would build a masjid.
Yeah, mashallah. It's a way to.
A gas station with alcohol.
It's a reset. It's a reset button.
It is about. Yeah, so lots of huge gas stations that are selling alcohol.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, at the end of the year, they build a masjid.
I have worse than that. Drug dealers, Yahi.
Oh.
Drug dealers walking into the masjid with wads of money and being like, man, I need to clear some sins. It's like, bro, you got bigger problems than that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, before we move on
Sure.
to car ownership,
Yeah.
speaking on dealer finance,
Yeah.
imagine it becomes not only much APR, it's very accessible. Kind of like how we were talking a couple weeks ago about
Sure.
the usury sphere.
Yeah. I
What
don't.
about a situation where you inherit a car that was obtained through that means?
So listen, anything that you receive, you have to preserve it at that point. Yeah, for example, if I inherit a home and there are payments left on that home and I'm forced to sell it in the moment, am I going to get the price that I'm for the value that I'm looking for that property? Probably not, right? There are people who are like, oh man, like I have to take over my father's mortgage because he's defaulted and like, we're going to lose the house. It's like, no man, take it. Okay. Like that situation is very exceptional to all of these in the sense that, okay, now you didn't choose to be in that situation. You were put and placed into there. So I will always advise people, like, listen, if you're placed into a situation or you're forced into a situation, take the route that will be best preserving of your wealth. Example, I inherit a gas station that sells liquor and gambling. What do? Give it away? Right? I sell it, right? But the market's low right now. And I know the market is bad right now. And I know that the market is going to pick up. So I can take those steps. It depends, right? There are certain chains. Like, what if it's franchised and the franchise forces certain things? And inshallah, I don't know if we'll get to it, but it is part of the discussion that, okay, well, what if I'm in those situations? What do I do? How do I decide? Am I allowed to purchase that franchise? All right? These are valid issues that people face and have to deal with. So what I will say when it comes to like businesses or stocks, a good gauge and marker is the AOFI standards. There are a few apps available online. AOFI is basically a standard that was come up with, I don't know which organization, but they're investment standards for Muslims. So it's like they're like Islamic investment standards that were created. They're put together. They're mashallah well thought out. a little conservative for me, but I think it's a good gauge. If they say it's okay, alhamdulillah. Like I would have no qualms or reservations about investing in a particular stock or a particular business. If they put their check next to it, I would say Bismillah, go for it.
Do they recommend, like which?
They do. So these are standards, right? So you don't have, it's not, they don't actually go around like grading. There are companies that use their standards for grading. And what are those companies? Zoya uses like a little bit of what they have. That's an app. There's Islamically, I don't think they use AOFI standards. They're actually a little bit more liberal when it comes to grading stocks, but it's still run by, I think, Muslims out of Malaysia. And then American-based, you have like Wahed, you have Azad, Amana, right? So these are all good. Like they're brokers, right? They're all good brokers and investment managers. I would suggest, like, if you have any questions, and like mashallah, like we've had Azad here. Like they're easy to reach out. Like they're cool people, man. Like if you have any questions, like their minimum investments start at like $500,000. But if you don't have the money, it's cool. It's fine. It's not a big deal. You can still actually make appointments with them. Be like, hey, listen, can you give me advice, investment? They'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Like they're really helpful, mashallah. And may Allah bless them. I think do we use them for Al-Hijrah, right? Right, we use Azad, yeah. So when we do the match for our 401ks, we actually use Azad. They're the ones who manage our portfolio. So use the AOFI standards, and you have your own personal risk tolerance when it comes to certain stocks. That is how you should make a decision with them. Bonds. This depends on where you stand concerning inflation, riba, amount versus value. There's a longer conversation with this. Right now, I'm hesitant with bonds, but I think it's something that I want to go a little bit deeper into and discuss. Stocks. So these are the different types of sales that are within the stock market. Yes. So spot transactions, these are regular sales and purchases of stocks. Margin trading is on debt. Short selling is basically you borrow the stock and you are betting on the stock losing value, and then you benefit from it. Day trading is where you make almost immediate sales, right? So you buy it and you purchase it within within moments. Options is basically creating the option to purchase something, so there's no underlying asset. Futures is there's a lot of speculation when it comes to futures, in the sense that, okay, I will purchase this oil, like 10 barrels of oil from you 10 years from now at this price, right? That's what a future transaction looks like. And then ETFs, these are exchange traded funds, which is basically like a basket of different types of stocks and different businesses that you can invest in. Yes?
I was going to ask, why do some Madahib believe that participating in investing in cryptocurrency is haram?
We'll get to cryptocurrency. There's a major underlying reasoning why people have a problem with it. Like, so those people who say it's haram, I'll explain why it's that. As for all of these, margin trading and short selling, I personally feel they're haram. The reason it's all based on leveraging, it's all based off of loaning, it's all based, and not just that, it's like short selling specifically, it's so damaging to the market, and it hurts businesses. I was so happy, like, you guys know about the GameStop story? I was so happy, dude. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, I'm just happy it happened. It's like one of those things. When it comes to spot transactions and day trading and ETFs, as long as they're Sharia compliant, go ahead, invest in them. I don't see a problem. I don't see an issue with that. And as far as options and futures are concerned, if they are covered options, I don't have a problem with them. Options that are not covered, I find extremely problematic because there's nothing that's being sold.
What are covered options?
Covered options is that you own the underlying asset. And then you give the option to sell, what was it, put or sell, right? I think it was puts, calls and sales, just like, or calls and puts. Yes?
Which type of stocks Nancy Pelosi invests in?
There's actually a Twitter account that you can follow that talks about all her trades. It's a few days late, or I think it's like 90 days late or something like that. But, huh?
There's a new app that some Harvard kid created called, it's called Dove.
Okay.
And he tracks all the big
Nice. I love that stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be comfortable in trading with all those, but it's like sticking it to the man. Like, I really enjoy that. Futures, there's a lot of khilaf around futures because they're like, okay, there's a lot of speculation behind that. The problem is that there is some type of resemblance to Bay as-Salam. Bay as-Salam is something that used to happen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where basically they would say, okay, hey, listen, I'm going to buy 10 kilos of dates from you a year from now, and they hadn't even begun the harvest, and then they pay it forward. But that transaction, if you actually look at it, it's helping the farmers prepare the fields and like coming up with the capital to do that. So can you do qiyas on futures with that? It is debatable. You have a lot of people who say no, it's extremely problematic. I think that you have an argument if you have an underlying commodity, because you can produce some of what is being made. So whether it be oil, you can control how much is coming from the ground, or whether it be wheat, and you can control how much is being produced. Those type of things. Like I said, you have a lot of scholars who have problems with it. Futures and options. Covered options, most of them say it's okay.
What about
ETFs are fine, as long as they're Sharia compliant.
It's fine.
Yeah. All it is just like, it's like a basket of different businesses.
For example, if I buy a stock of a share of Amazon,
Yeah.
is it okay?
So you have to go back to this slide. Right here.
Question is here.
Yeah.
Amazon sell wine too.
Yes.
If I buy a share of it,
Yeah.
am I?
I think I'll be able to cover this answer when we get to a discussion on the different businesses. And if we don't, feel free to ask again. So cryptocurrency. The problem that many people have with cryptocurrency, they say currency is something that must be regulated by the government. That's their argument. But there's nothing in the Sharia that stipulates that. Who regulates gold and silver? Right? These are natural commodities. And this is something that you make, and if people feel value behind it because of the safety that's there, or because of the services that is being provided in the transfer of that value. Have any of you ever used cryptocurrency or transferred it? No? Yeah, okay. How quickly does it go from one wallet to another? Like it's almost instant, right? So Solana is like super fast. Like even Bitcoin is slow, or even if you use like USDC or whatever, transferring the money, at the most it'll be like 10 minutes, right? I don't even think it'll take more than that. Have any of you ever used? I'm sure all of you have used Swift. Sometimes it can take days. Like if you go through conventional banking, it takes a lot of time. So is there a value in me, like for me, as a consumer, to utilize this product if I can move value that quickly? So I know why people have a problem with it. The reason governments have a problem with it is because they no longer are able to track the movement of it because they use Swift, right? And they can, with Swift transfers, they can actually track those very easily. With the crypto, it's a lot more challenging. So you have different types of cryptocurrency and different types of coins. There are those that provide storage value, those that provide security value, those that provide just value, intrinsic value in and of itself, right? So it's representative of that, just like if you use cash. You have gambling coins and meme coins. You have coins that you can stake. And staking is basically a process that when you move money from one place to another, there's verification that happens at each point until it gets to your wallet. And if you add your cryptocurrency to that, what happens is that you get a share in the transaction fees. So essentially is what staking is. Yield farming is very similar to staking, except they give you a different coin. I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, with the yield farming stuff. Yeah.
Is done in the dark web. That's what.
I have no idea. I don't even know how dark web works. I know you need like, what is it, Onion browser or something, or Tor browser? Tor, is it? That's it. That's the only thing I know. Other than that, it's like, somebody told me it was like, what, 99% of the web is on like the dark web or something. I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what that means. But like, So there, yeah, I don't know. What I will say is like, okay, what do I need to help me make a decision on whether I should invest in this cryptocurrency or not? Unfortunately, most scholars are not versed in all of the cryptocurrencies because there's so many. The easiest way to do it, just read the white papers, right? So every coin has something called a white paper, and that gives you the details of what that coin, what service that coin provides, how it works, and the value that's behind it. Yes?
Why is meme bad?
Because there's no value behind those, right? Most of the meme coins are like pump and dump schemes, right? And it's very predatory, like, which is, I don't know anyone that's really allowed them. And gambling is very clear, right? Because they're strictly used for gambling.
Bitcoin, gambling.
Bitcoin is not gambling. It is a store of value. Yield farming is the only one that I have a question mark around, right? I'm not 100% sure about yield farming. But because you're getting a different coin when you involve, like, I don't know. I have to read more into it. Forex. You know what this graph represents? It's the number of people that fail at Forex. It is as high as 90% of people who are in foreign exchange. They will fail miserably and they will lose all of their money. It is highly speculative. Highly speculative. Do not involve yourself at all. Stay away, like with a 10-foot pole. Loans. So for business loans, I will say if you're a startup, I have a huge problem in taking a business loan if you're a startup. A big part of that being because 90% of them fail. Yes.
So going back to Forex, it's also an exchange for money with a little bit of a hope for the market, right?
Yeah. But the problem is like in exchange for one currency for a different type of currency, right? So currency exchange I'm fine with, right? I don't have a problem with that. I don't have an issue for that. And even if someone's like, okay, I'm going to take a fee for that exchange. Okay, you're providing a service. Like all that entire transaction I would be okay with. But like the speculation behind, like just the number of people that fail in it, man, like it's clearly predatory, man. Yeah.
Speculation piece. Okay.
No, it's not speculation because everything has speculation, right? But if a majority of it is involved, like if the major contributing factor to it is the speculation, that's where I have a problem, right? So Bitcoin, like there's speculation behind it, but there's also a service and a value that's provided with that. Yeah. Yes.
I want to ask, can you share like the general principles,
Mhm.
Islamic principles that come when it, like 101, like when someone's looking to invest or
Yeah.
trade, like these are the principles they have to follow. You want to make sure it's like.
I mean, if you guys like, we can do an investment course. I can call some of the Azad guys. Like he had come before, and we can talk about some of their standards.
Because like I've always
Yeah.
heard like like speculation, like you mentioned,
Sure.
or holding an asset. Like I want to learn like okay, what is the larger plethora?
All right, bet. Listen, you guys are in the group. Asaq is going to start doing surveys of the classes and the things you guys are looking for. And Azad guys, they're super cool. Like I've worked with them before, and getting them to come out here and do a presentation on like, hey, listen, this is how we decide on what we're going to invest in, and we can help you invest in certain things. Yeah.
Group chat I was in, and like someone asked like, hey, I know someone who's made a ton of money with the covered option.
Yeah.
Is that something that I can do?
Sure.
Like, how do you manage it? You have to know the answer.
Yeah. I mean, you have to understand the transactions too, right? Like, but like I said, those guys, they're dope. They're good, inshallah, and like I have no problem bringing them in. Yes.
So Bitcoin mining also is very predatory, right? Or most people fail at it.
The mining, yes. Like unless you were like a very early miner,
Yeah.
right? Right now it's like the cost, like the electricity cost to produce Bitcoin. It's just not. It's not worth it unless you're getting free energy.
Then it's not.
But you're right in that situation that you're not going to benefit from it. Allahu Alam, that's a good question. Let me sit on that. Let me think about that one. But that's actually an excellent question. So the question then comes is like, okay, well, if 90% of business startups fail, what if a person comes and they have proper research and they have the proper capital to create that business? This can go up to a 75% success rate. At that point, is it permissible for them to take those loans? I think that there is a case for it. Because the SBA just like the FHA or the Federal Housing Authority, there are certain protective measures in place that allow space for those businesses. But this is a more case-by-case thing. The other question might be is like, okay, well, what if I want to expand my business? I allow more room for this. Like, I think there's a lot more latitude in this because they already have something that's successful and they're just looking to expand it. Again, this is more of a discussion on like, okay, well, what are the rates at the time? What are the protective measures in place? Sometimes some of those loans can be forgiven, right? Depending on what the loan is. So I think there's a lot of room for exploration in this, and it's something that deserves a lot more. I think there's a lot more depth behind it, and Allah knows best. What kind of businesses can I open? So this might relate to your question. Is okay. What if the majority of offerings are halal? Can I guarantee 100% halal?
No.
It's tough, right? So the question comes is like, okay, is 99%? 94%? Right? We start talking about thresholds again. And I think in the term, everybody's going to say like, no, it has to be majority halal. Like, what does that majority look like? Okay, and what if it's a company like Dunkin' Donuts? They're not making a majority of their profits from the pork products that they have. Does that make it okay for me now to purchase Dunkin' Donuts as a franchise and open it up? The other question I have, are non-Muslims expected to follow the Shari'i guidelines? So can I tell a Christian they're not allowed to eat pork?
No.
I mean, I can. He'll be like, right? Or don't drink alcohol. I can't do any of those things. And this is a usuli discussion, is like, and the question is هل الكفار مخاطبون بفروع الشريعة? You know, are the disbelievers commanded to follow the rules of the Sharia? Right? Does a non-Muslim woman have to wear a hijab? Does a non-Muslim man have to pray 5 times a day? Right? Like, these, is that required? Some scholars say yes, it is required, but they'll have double the punishment on the day of judgment. 1, because they didn't accept Islam, and 2, because they didn't follow those guidelines. Allah knows best. But if you understand that there is khilaf in this issue, the question then is, all right, what if I'm selling a product to someone who finds it permissible? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So back when the jizya existed, right, the whole point of the jizya was to allow these individuals to exist in their behaviors.
Yeah.
So how did the classical Muslims deal with this issue?
The difference here is that the Muslims had authority. What if I'm in a position where I don't have authority?
But did the classical Muslims sell alcohol?
No, they didn't.
They didn't. Okay.
So, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whatever is impermissible is also impermissible to sell. But remember the space that we're operating in? Remember how I prefaced this entire discussion around the maqasid. Right? If the goal is to preserve wealth and I'm operating in a space where I'm already, you know what I mean? Basically, the question I'm asking or I'm posing to you guys as an audience, right, is there any room to kind of widen the funnel a little bit? Does that make sense? Yes.
I was just gonna say, like, I know of cases where 7-Eleven franchisees were mandated, I think 5 years ago,
Yeah.
to must carry alcohol,
Yeah.
and they had been in their agreements for 10 years, 15, 20
Yep.
years. Some sold, some donated.
Whatever the
Yeah,
alcohol sales were.
alcohol
Yeah.
sales, and some just accepted it.
Yeah.
And so there was that spectrum.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, you know, there are situations that are real like that. And it's like, okay, well, should Muslims be prevented from entering into those businesses? Right? And like I said, like the question is like, okay, do we have room? Like, there is a funnel there and there are guardrails. Like, nobody's doubting that. Is there room to kind of, you know, can we squeeze it a little bit wider? Can we widen it just a little bit so that Muslims can operate in a few more spaces? Because we're not asking for all spaces. Is anybody going to argue like, hey, listen, can I open a pig farm? Right? nobody's arguing that. It's like, oh, so you're saying it's okay for me to open like a Budweiser, you know what I mean, like a factory? Like, no, nobody's arguing that. Nobody's
You're
saying
talking
that.
about the question,
Yeah.
how can I open a pig farm?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the problem with that?
Oh, if you don't,
It's an animal.
if you don't consume it or sell it, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, so
I don't really know what the utility would be at that point.
Can you pet it? Can you pet it?
Yeah, I mean, this خلاف على نجاسة الخنزير, right? So like, is the khinzir in and of itself najis?
so the,
Yeah.
the rule is not to eat it, right?
Sure.
But I mean, it's
So,
still a creature.
So
you know,
I'm saying, listen. So the question is like, okay, can you benefit from it, and what are the benefits that you can take from it? I personally think there are a lot of medical benefits.
medical.
Yeah,
Yes,
transplant,
Yes.
skin
Lots
grafts,
of
like
research, yeah.
like it's
But isn't that in a way consumption in and of itself?
not really, right? Consuming is like you're digesting it, and you know what I mean, like, which is very different.
compatible with the
Consumption isn't just
Okay, let me ask this question, Asal. If this person has burns, skin burns, like people lose like the first 3 layers of their skin.
they use fish actually
Huh?
for that. They use fish skin for that.
Okay, they also use pig skin.
No, not one, yeah. But
and the liver, skin.
but I mean, if there are alternatives,
Mm.
you know,
Listen, there's always going to be better alternatives, but it really depends on what is available to the hospital at the time. And not just that, okay, if this is something I can explore and I can save people's lives,
Also, bone loss for teeth. They do graft out of the pigs.
are you serious? That is crazy. Wow. Like I didn't, like this stuff I didn't even know. Like I don't know how I'd feel about like a pig tooth in my mouth, but like yeah. Yeah. No. I understand. So, so that the bone can grow back. But so the thing is like, okay, to what extent can we kind of expand those guardrails? There are certain things in the Sharia that it's very clear on why. Remember we were talking about ta'lilat, like, you know, why the reasoning behind things. It's like, okay, well, alcohol, we know why it's not permissible. Like, if I said something like, all right, well, what about pig? What is the reason that Allah prohibited the consumption of pigs?
Because it's spoiled back in the days. It had the.
Well, right? Like
there are reasons that we may still not know.
There might be reasons that become clear in the future. So saying that, sometimes the ta'lil can come because somebody discovers something later. Be like, no, this is, you know what? This is very clear. Now we understand that this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited this. Then you know what you can do? Qiyas. But if you don't know the reasoning, what do? Tawaqquf. Right? It's like, okay, khalas, this is something that's ta'abudi. And there are certain things in Islam that are like that. Like, for example, it's like, okay, well, why do we pray 4 rak'at for Dhuhr and 3 for Maghrib? Ta'abudi. Like, I don't know. Like,
And it's also the question
yeah.
that our kids living in the US ask, why can't I eat pork?
Sure. And I'm saying, and there are certain things that, okay, you know what? I have no problem justifying this, this, and this, but there are also things in our religion. Hey, listen. Like, I don't have the answer to it, and we just accept it as it is.
You should listen to Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
You know Joel Osteen?
No.
This preacher down in Houston.
Okay.
I mean, he talks about pork.
Yeah.
To Christians.
Sure.
I mean, there are medical research about why.
Okay. Okay. I'll take a look, inshallah. Yes.
Joel Osteen.
So
He's
just
a
to be
preacher
clear,
down in Houston.
like is how a business makes the majority of its revenue not a factor?
It is.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So if I'm saying, so, and I very pointedly use the example of Dunkin' Donuts, right? Because Dunkin' Donuts, majority of what they sell is coffee, right? They have some sandwiches, right? Breakfast sandwiches and things, and they do have some pork products. I would imagine a vast majority of their sales come from coffee. I would imagine that. I don't know, right? Like, I don't have the numbers. And if we're saying in the Sharia we have a tolerance for small amounts of haram, that's very subjective, right? Like, defining that. Does that mean that I can own a Dunkin' Donuts, especially knowing that even the product that I'm selling, yes, I understand, I agree, that consuming is haram, but I'm selling it to people who it's halal for them to consume.
there's no concept of like increasing fasad in the community.
Sure.
Distributing
What fasad does pork cause?
Just as a principle.
So I'll get tolerance levels, right? So this is something that's very important. There are things that I don't believe you can have any tolerance for. And the tolerance level, it changes based on my level of control. And I'll discuss that because we're talking from a business aspect. We're also going to talk from an employee aspect, right? Where do I have more control? Right at the top, when I own the business. And as I move down, right, toward the employee, I have less control. Therefore, what's going to happen to my tolerance levels? They have to increase. But if I own a business, like, no, alcohol, like you're talking about facade, these things clearly have facade, correct? Like the social impact of these things is very clear. Like, what about the social impact of these things
Sorry, why is silk an issue?
for men?
Oh,
But I guess you can make the argument that like there are some things that we just don't know the wisdom behind why they're
Sure.
for us.
Absolutely.
So
And I agree with you, right? I'm not arguing that. But there are the things that we do know, it's very clear, right? You see what alcohol does, right? You see what gambling does. You see what prostitution does in the community. Do I see what silk ties do in the community?
No.
And I'm not belittling it, right? It's haram. Like, what's haram is haram.
Well,
And I'm going to stay away from it, yeah.
It's corruption, it doesn't just stay to you, whereas that, it just consumption.
You're right. So, and that's another thing. It's like, okay, why, like, how come there is a little level of tolerance, even within the Sharia? For example, if I have, the Prophet ﷺ forbade drinking from gold utensils, but he allowed, so you guys know, like sometimes with pottery cracks, you know, they fill it with gold because it's a soft metal, right? It's soft, it fills that space. The Prophet ﷺ allowed that. Embroidery with silk. He saw, like, that amount of silk is allowed. Why? You know what I mean? Like, if it was something that was so vile and so evil, it should be in that category. Does that make sense?
yeah.
But if there's a little bit of room for it, remember, like, what are we talking? We're talking about, like, how do we widen that funnel just a little bit? And is there room for it or not? Yes.
There's no tolerance on these four, but on the other four, what is the leeway? Like, for example,
The social impact.
you want a jewelry store.
No, I'm saying clear social impact. That's where I would draw the line. And that's something with those you can very clearly see. With these, it's very difficult to see.
I would add another
Yeah.
column to this, because he was talking about being an investor,
Sure.
that with, like, Amazon selling alcohol.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another good discussion, right? So over here, this is a business, but I mean, technically, you're a business owner, right?
Yeah, if you're investing, yeah.
Right?
You own a piece of it.
Like you own a piece of it. You're the business owner there. I would have no tolerance for that, right? So if I knew this corporation or whatever, because I have a choice. Do I have to invest with Amazon? There are other vehicles that are there that I can utilize, right? And there are some people who might do some dark things and things that I disagree with, like Google, right? You know, there's a lot of spying and a lot of things that happen, right? They facilitate a lot of things, but okay, but there's nothing really clear there that I can really see. Yeah.
I would just say, going back to the standard that you were talking about,
Mhm.
that Azad and a lot of
Yeah.
companies, is they look at the percentage sale.
Yeah.
They list out.
Yes,
the
they do.
percentage,
They list out the details.
And they divest that amount
Yep.
before they give it to you.
Yep. So, I mean, knowledge is power, right? That's why it's so important to know about all of these things. Taib, what about student loans? This goes back to our initial discussion that if I'm trying to protect the intellectual integrity of the community, right? Well, I'm not as an individual, meaning that there are services that needed to be provided to the community, and it can only happen through certain education paths and routes. I put some conditions. Some of those conditions is that the job is highly likely, like you're likely to land a job after you graduate, right? This is a must. Otherwise, if you don't, what's going to happen?
It'll have to.
Right? You're going to be, and I put a 5-year timeline. This is not arbitrary. Within 7 years, your credit history will be cleared if you're able to pay it off within those 7 years. But does this mean that you'll probably have to work your butt off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does.
Or work
Mhm.
for the government.
Or work for, yeah. So there are other plans, right? So if I become a teacher, if I work for the government for 5 years, what happens? Like, it forgives it. And there are other pathways that are available for people for forgiveness. Like, if you become a pharmacist, right? You go and you work for CVS for 5 years for like $10,000 a year. And you work like 80 hours a week. They'll pay it off for you. Like, I mean, there are other pathways, you know, that are definitely out there. Utilize them. Like, I would say this comes into play after you've looked for grants, right? After you've looked for scholarships, after you've done your due diligence, then start applying some of these things. But you have to be able to pay it off as quickly as possible. You have to be able to get a job. I don't want someone to come in and be like, oh, you know, I studied musical string theory. Like, bro, you're not gonna get a job with that, man. Like, and you paid $120,000 for this, you know, for this degree. Like, it doesn't make any sense. this very much limits your college options, right? The moment that you start putting these conditions, you become extremely limited, more often than not, to STEM fields.
Is it?
STEM fields.
STEM fields.
Yeah, yeah.
I would add one more piece to it, which is community college for 2 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then
No, I think that's reasonable, right? So I'm saying, like, listen, whatever pathway you can do, if I don't care, you go to community college, you don't, if you can pay it off, bismillah, go for it. Yeah.
So, like on the preface that the loan is predatory and
Mhm.
student loans that
Yeah.
are subsidized, right? There are people, like, assuming these are in place, so usually you're talking about STEM fields,
Yeah.
there are, like, there's a choice of schools that are very expensive.
Yeah, yeah,
versus
yeah.
schools
No,
that
no, you should.
and different
Yes.
fields, different
Yes.
degrees also vary. in
Absolutely.
prices. So there's the idea of like having an alternative.
Mhm.
So where do we draw the line with like classic example, medical school?
Yeah.
Long years, very expensive.
Yeah.
You typically want to go to the best schools, right?
Yeah.
Like, does someone absolutely need to be a doctor and take that high loan?
You don't, right? We can all work at gas stations, right? We can all work at Walmart. Like, we can, like, realistically, but part of our religion is preserving that intellectual integrity of the community. And even if I choose to be that, okay, like, if I have the inclination toward that, I encourage it, man. Like, Islam isn't here to discourage anyone's, like, professional pathways, especially if, okay, is there a harm there? Yeah, there is. I don't disagree with you. And college has in general become a racket, right? Except for those few fields. And it is a problem. But a lot of the problem is because of, like I said, like musical string theory, right? That's a huge problem. It's a huge issue.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm talking in the case where like there are people who
Mhm.
can't see themselves doing anything else, and that's kind of a, that's okay.
Sure.
But with the people that kind of
They have that latitude.
have that
Yeah.
little latitude, I'm speaking strictly in terms of like, okay, this is usury at this point,
Yeah.
right? So is it an obligation on them to avoid it?
I have difficulty saying no, man. I can't force that pathway. And the reason is, like, and if they come to me and they actually have a plan, they'll be like, no, this is what it is. The reason I'm going to the school is because the likelihood of me placing is much sooner. I can get residency on this. I can start paying back in this time. I've spoken to 4 other doctors who've taken this path and they've paid back in this amount of time. Like, yeah, they worked their butts off and they did this. Like, I know people like that. Like, I know some of my friends, like, they were cancer specialists. Some of them were like podiatrists and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yo, I worked 100 hours a week for like 5 years.
I have to follow up with you on that.
Yeah,
Because now,
sure.
to be honest, I'm a little confused now. Okay,
Mhm.
like a couple of weeks ago, we said this is getting into usury, right?
Sure.
And usury, of course, is
Absolutely, yeah.
So
So I'm saying it is absolutely haram if you don't have, like, if you have a reasonable alternative. And how you define that alternative, man. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. But it was less time before. It increased.
It's time.
But Balash. Yeah.
Just
Yes.
FYI, there is also a continuous charity that gives Muslim
Yeah.
students.
No, listen. There are a lot of grants. There are a lot of scholarships. Exhaust whatever means you have available to you. Like, being very honest. I know it's tough, man. But the problem is like, okay, if I'm living in a space and a time where everything is just predatory, should I just stop? You know, and I don't think that's reasonable either. What I would like to see is like, okay, hey, we need to start developing parallel institutions so that things actually are affordable, right? You know, and I think that's the only way forward. But the only way to do that is like actually getting people in the field first, right? Otherwise, in 10 years when I'm ready to open it and I don't have anybody, that's a tough sell. So that's what I hope anyway, inshallah. May Allah facilitate it. Yeah.
Programs to get people in the field. More programs.
That's why I want to open up opportunities. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Someone is asking, please answer if the means justify the ends, means equal to loans and equal
Yeah.
to doctor education.
In these situations, yes, because we're using as long as it falls within the maqasid of the Sharia, right? That's the boundary. Now, if it's just like, oh, I like this, right? And even if I do like it, does it fall under that category, right? Does it fall under one of those categories is something that's really important. The example we use is like, okay, finding a dead animal, right? Like, what if I come across a dead deer and I love venison, right? Like, I love venison and I come across the dead venison. It doesn't change the ruling, right? It's still permissible for me, even though my heart is, drawn toward that.
Someone else is asking, what about housing loans?
Housing, we talked about it in the beginning, man. But yeah, it's fine. Go, buy a house. Listen, if you could buy a house and invite me for dinner. We spoke about this, I think, in the first class. Just make sure you treat it as ATM and you're paying it off monthly. Taib, if I'm in a work environment, I think this is the last set of slides. What do you guys think about these fields or these situations? I work for USPS. I work for FedEx. I'm carrying alcohol, right? I work for Uber. I'm taking someone to a bar.
But you don't know when you do. Well, yes, destination.
I mean, if you know,
I'm saying as a cashier, I'm scanning the alcohol. Yeah.
Depends if they are in need or not, and then also the majority. You were saying there is this argument if the majority is halal, then
Sure. So, is it permissible for me to be a cashier at Giant? May Allah guide you all. Astaghfirullah, spreading fasad and alcohol in the world.
But the majority is halal, not alcohol.
I agree. Yeah.
Groceries.
What do you guys think? You became like fuqaha, like from after one lecture?
But that's actually,
Yeah.
It's rubbing off.
Yeah.
there's also the aspect of handling.
Yeah. You're handling it.
And imagine,
Yeah.
imagine like studying, pharmacy and spending all years learning, and then working in a CVS,
Yeah.
and then selling alcohol and cigarettes. How disgusting is that?
And you're selling the medicine to help them deal with their cigarette addiction.
Look at
Yes.
the sentences.
Exactly. Anti-tobacco.
Say that the Coast Guard
Mm-hmm.
is not actively
Mm.
killing,
Mm. Okay.
others, but they're just protecting their
The territory.
Like ICE.
But
But now you have the-
there would be on like a boat in the water, on the
Yeah. Sure.
waters and everything.
All right. I mean, someone can argue like the reserves, like how often do reserves actually see action? Like it's actually very rare. And they're like, oh, well, what are the benefits you get out of it? Like they pay for your college, right? But I mean, these are concerns, and people do bring them up. So the cashier, you guys are okay with the cashier? Why?
I don't feel right to check off.
So the cashier, yeah, because here, I think it's important for us also, when it comes to individual jobs, it's important to understand how do I parse out the service that I'm selling? Because as a cashier, what service am I selling to the business?
your labor.
What part of the labor? Right? I'm scanning. My job is to process items. That is what I'm selling to that business. And as long as the majority of what that business sells is halal, then it is permissible for me to work in that space. And okay, I'm a delivery driver, or I work for FedEx. There are pornographic magazines, alcohol, pork, right? All kinds of nonsense that I'm carrying. Is it okay for me to be a FedEx driver? Amazon, UPS, USPS, all these delivery men. Pizza delivery.
With pork.
Pizza is pork. Right? So as the, you have to take the pepperoni off on the way.
Or dash door.
Yeah, and then feed it to your pig farm. So like, DoorDash. So essentially all of these different services, like, so as a cashier, my job is to process goods. As a delivery person, my job is to transport goods. Like the service I'm selling is the transporting. I'm not selling the actual items. And the same thing with the cashier. He's not selling the actual items. Again, as long as the majority of the stuff is halal, these things are inshallah halal. Like, what about working for the DOD? Working for the Coast Guard? Army? Front lines? Paratroopers?
But you can be an admin person in the army. You don't have to hold weapons. But
So
if you're
I just send the soldiers.
You process their travel orders.
The travelers, like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you are going to Iraq and come back with 5 kills. No? Allah protect the Muslims. I mean, yes.
The majority of the delivery for Uber and DoorDash,
Yeah.
I think that's haram food.
Okay, then don't do it. Yeah.
If not, we are not allowed to do that.
If you feel majority is haram, then you shouldn't do it. Yes.
But for Uber drivers, for example, go to the bar. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that. Is it? What do you think?
You're taking the person. You're not taking the drinks, right?
You take the person to the.
Yeah. What they do there is up to them. There's like a real so there's a bar in Falls Church. They have like a really good brownie sundae.
How would you know?
Because I had it.
If you go-
Dogwood Tavern.
For example, if
Yeah.
you go this
Mhm.
customer go to
Yeah.
the bar, is it allowed to take?
Your job is to take the person from point A to point B. What they do over there in that space, that is completely their prerogative. Yeah. Yes, between them and Allah. Yeah.
But can't you use the same argument for like delivering alcohol? What they do?
What they do with the alcohol? No, but I'm saying we already talked. If alcohol is the only thing that I'm delivering, then it's haram. We already said that, right? But if it's one of the things, like I said, USPS, FedEx, Amazon, like part of their deliveries is alcohol. As long as it's not a majority of what they're delivering, it's fine. Yes.
The question says, what about software maintenance of DoD systems? Many Muslims have.
Yeah. Absolutely. How many people work for like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon? Like it's very very popular. A lot of people work in those fields. It's tough, right? Like I'm not here to prohibit any of these fields because sometimes it's like okay the software stuff that they're doing is like sometimes it's for missiles. There's a brother who came to me. He's like, Sheikh, like they want me to work on some of the spy software and I'm going to be spying on like Russia and China. I was like, I actually have less issue with that, right? Like, yeah. Because there are elements of the defense, Department of Defense and like armed services that I'm like, okay, well, some of the things that they're doing, it allows me to have some of the liberties and freedoms that I have, right? Not everything, but some of the things for sure. The fact that they're able to impress this power upon others, it causes that sense of intimidation, and it allows me to go to most countries in the world uninhibited. Yeah.
Is there, going back to the time of the Sahaba, there were factions that conflicted and fought each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something you can pull from there for the DoD or armed services?
So there are situations, the one I can think of is seeking help from non-Muslims. In the Prophet ﷺ, in certain situations, he did. Some of those people very clearly, like munafiqeen, he knew exactly who they were. He had no issue seeking help from them and asking them, right? In these situations, it's like, okay, if I'm part of this country that provides XYZ services, and here, let me put it this way. As an American, is it in my interest for America to be successful?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, 100%. So if I'm doing those things that are helping bring it success, not at the expense of Muslims, is that okay?
It's not, I was thinking more in terms of, we took an oath to the country.
Sure.
Voluntarily.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if somebody else
Okay.
has the leadership, we assume that they do, and if they decide something, or fighting Muslims,
Yeah.
something, like, I'm just kind of thinking through, like,
Let me ask this question another way. Are there, even in a Muslim state,
right,
are there going to be times where the Khalifa, let's say there's a Khalifa, right? And he's like, okay, we're going to go preemptive strike this place. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't think that's a good idea. Can that happen?
Yeah, of course.
Again, right? Like I don't need to agree with all of the decisions that a government that I'm happy with, let alone maybe unhappy with. If there are certain decisions that the government is making, it's not representative of me as an individual. And even if I say things like, I love America, what does that mean? Like, I love the beauty, I love the structure, I love, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that I love and I enjoy about it. I love the freedom, right? But does it mean that I love Nancy Pelosi, right? Or Congress, Trump,
I'll
MAGA,
ask
baby.
personally for myself as
Yeah.
well, because, like, I've worked, supported them in consulting.
Get him out.
Accounting, right? But I struggled the whole time.
Sure.
And had a bad taste in my mouth.
No, I'm saying, ya akhi, like, listen, this is just for people to be like, okay, listen, is that option available to you or not?
Right.
Whether you choose to take it is completely up to you. Remember what we talked about? We said like, okay, hey, listen, these are the boundaries, and these are the choices. And the moment you step in, your heart is like, oh man, this is disgusting. Get out of there, man. You know what I mean? Like your heart is telling you exactly what to do. Yes, but the money that you earned, alhamdulillah, keep it. Yeah.
So having established that like you can still be within the boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
is like there's the idea of seeking a better alternative. Is there like any sort of grounding to that?
Absolutely.
To the Sharia?
Yeah, of course. Listen, if I have a choice, I should always take the better choice, but can I obligate the better choice? That's the question. Right? There's always going to be a better choice. Even as an imam, right? I work in the masjid. Right? Like, is there a better option and a better choice? Yeah.
I guess, let me rephrase. I guess my question is there any sort of like obligation to seek that choice, to seek an alternative?
If it's halal, no. I'm not obligated. Is it that, because that is a discussion on wara. That's a discussion on personal piety. And if you choose to do that, that will only better your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will only make you a more pious individual and a pious person, especially if you want to stay away from certain things. But we'll stop here. I had a whole discussion on insurance. Unfortunately, I didn't get to, but I thought this was shorter than it would be, but unfortunately it went longer than it did. If you guys are in the group, message either Omar or Amna, and if you guys want to continue this discussion, or if there are issues that you're like, hey, listen, we want to go into more depth around these things, and I have no issue, I have no problem doing that. I enjoy this stuff. It's fun for me. Yeah.
Do you think we should have a session next week?
Do a poll. All right, yeah, do a poll. If we get enough people, inshallah, we can close with the insurance discussion next week, because I do want to talk about life insurance. I think that's a very important discussion to have. Why are you so bored, bro? It's like it's because you're like 18. You don't care about life insurance. It's only like old people like me that are worried. So yeah, inshallah, we'll do a poll. If we get enough people, we'll continue the conversation next week. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The week after that, we're gonna do fasting in preparation for Ramadan. Okay. خلاص. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. The QR code, yes. Where is the QR code? Can you send it to me on Telegram? Mm-hmm.